You're almost there. We're entering phase 4, which is finalizing tactics. Remember, we just touched on macro tactics, the big picture items that we're going to be utilizing. Now we're going to be touching on the tactics, the roadmap, the plan that's going to help someone to get where you're trying to get them. Now, there are two different components or different approaches that you can look to the tactical side. One of them could be a series of steps that someone could take, or the actual implementation of how you're going to develop or you're going to create the plan. So depending on where you are in the process and who you're developing it for, it'll make a difference on how you approach this. Yet in the end, we're developing tactics. We're creating the plans that people can follow. And this is the how-to part of the plan. This is the steps that people would take. It would think about the Goldsmith productivity principle, the GPP, where we want you to take a look at the 80%. What types of tools, methodologies, approaches are necessary? What type of equipment are necessary to be able to follow through on this? And also the 20%. What are the people? Who are the people who are going to be executing on this? In this section, you're really thinking it through and saying, will it work? Now, I'm going to give you some of the overview of the details, but in the empowerment process, in chapter 11, I spend a lot more time going into this. So right now, I'm going to give you a very quick overview, and at least it'll give you a starting point. As you move through the book, I'll clarify many of these pieces. So you're looking at the systems and structure, you're looking at the pieces, and the analogy, or going back to our traveling example, would be this. In this phase, you're determining the plan. You're looking at, for example, the reservations you're going to make, the plane trip that you're going to have. You're going to note the places on the trip that you're going to take, the restaurants you're going to stop at. You might look for travel insurance, or you're going to be looking at how to dine. Now, depending on the type of person that you're dealing with who's going to follow through on this execution, you can get very specific or very broad. For example, if you were to say to a friend of yours who hasn't traveled at all, you have to go out of the country to Buenos Aires next week. To them, this could be a life-changing ordeal. They'd have to figure out what to do, what to bring. Do they need a passport? Do they not have how can they rush through that? So there's a lot of steps that might be involved. I can tell you right now, if you said to me, David, you need to be in Buenos Aires tomorrow, I would go to sleep tonight and wake up and be ready to leave. It's that simple. I travel 300,000 miles a year. To hop on a plane to go someplace in the world, not a big deal. And it depends on the type of person, so you'd have to be addressing that individual. And if you're going to go on this travel itinerary that we've talked about, you have to think about the people that you're working with. So let's get down in terms of business terminology. These could be architectural blueprints. They could be project plans. They could be shopping lists, just a simple shopping list. All of those that will enable the person who's following through on the activity to be able to get there. So let's give a simple example. I go over this more in the empowerment process. Let's say you're putting on an event and you are having people cook meals for part of fundraising. It's an activity you have. And you have a bunch of people who are participating in this. If there are people who do not know how to cook, to teach them how to saute mushrooms and onions, you might have to give them some guidance. But if you have a person who works at a local restaurant and they're a cook, you could say, look, just saute the onions and the mushrooms, and we're going to make such and such a dish. The difference is very important. Win by a nose, lose by a nose. If you have the right plans, people can follow through with them, designed for those people. And so as part of this, you have to make sure that the plans are doable. Will they be able to follow through on the plans that you have? And if they look at them and they don't believe they can, you're not going to get the desired outcome that you're looking for. And I would even suggest that you go out and test them. If you've come up with some plans, go try them yourself, or try them on a friend to see if that would work. For example, if we're talking about this example of cooking. Now, if we're going to be going on a trip, I might give a whole different set of scenarios and planning, and I might go talk to somebody else, say, did I forget anything in this type of itinerary? That's why you might talk to a travel agent or read something online or watch a video, because you want to make sure that all your plans do work out. And you've already heard or will hear stories where plans didn't turn out the way they wanted because the plans weren't done properly. Now, you also will be interested in, I had this small company who said to me, I don't need to do plans. We don't set up plans. What we do is we give them to people and then they figure them out. I said, just so you know, that's a plan. The fact that you've decided not to give a plan is in fact a tactic. we're not going to give you plans. If you say as part of it, we need to supply plans and tools, that's another tactic. And I do, this is a personal taste, I have been in so many meetings where I've heard executives from VPs to frontline saying, I can't believe they just threw this to us. I can't believe they just told us we have to come up with this. Or they've set some spreadsheet forecasting, which I've spoken about, where they've said we have to grow 15%. And they say, are these people out of their mind? The market has changed, the conditions have changed, they're not doing this, they're not doing that. That's not to say you can't get around it. I always believe there's a solution to everything. Yet when plans don't connect with the people they're working with, you're bound for some failures. So let me give you an example of one of my favorite stories when it comes to this area of developing tactics, or how it shows that it would be difficult. There was a show in the United States called Oprah's Big Give, and she had a series of activities which she would have competitors come together, and they were each given $100,000 in one of these episodes, and they had to get rid of it within a period of time. The rules were very, very vague. For example, you did have to give no more than $500 per individual, and no more than $10,000 to a group. And then they gave them a car, gave them all the same tools, car, cell phone, and all the pieces, and said, go out and get rid of it. One person gave away almost everything, was able to come up with plans. They went to an appliance place and they gave appliances to people who were deserving. They had 24 hours to do this. All the way to the person who got lost in her car. She gave away almost nothing. So you'd say, think about that for a minute. Everybody given the same amount of information, the same rules, the same $100,000, but one person could barely give it away and the other person gave away almost everything. It's because that person, in my opinion, had better planning skills, created alliances, called up certain people, pulled them together, came up with a plan that worked, and set on a tactical series that would enable them to get there. So let me give you some things to think about as you're going through your own expedition on trying to figure out tactics. First of all, tactics must be detailed and specific. Specify the person, the groups, the departments, the outsider, who will perform some of those functions. And if you do it properly, morale will increase. You'll get a faster movement in the direction that you'd like. You'll also avoid things such as bad publicity, product releases that are poorly done, or even legal action. The next is that tactics need to be show or highlight interdependencies and chronological order that happens. I'm going to teach you how to do this as part of this planning. What you need to be able to do is people need to be able to see how things fall into place. One of the tools you're going to learn about is the CPM chart as a means of being able to look through how the series of events are dependent and interdependent. And you'll find that once you learn how to do them, you'll never go back. It'll really change how your behavior is, how your behavior and your actions are every day when you're thinking. Now, the tactical plans also need to be as flexible as necessary. So, for example, they need to be flexible in one way for selling baby clothing. Veronica's got 2 months left to go. Selling baby clothing or furniture, I can be much more flexible selling to Veronica whatever she needs, as compared to a nuclear reactor person who's got to manage a nuclear reactor. Each of the different scenarios determine the flexibility component of it. There's a risk factor, there's all sorts of variables that go into it. And in the book we go over them, but here I want you to be thinking about there are limitations or ability to expand. Then there's the skill set. What you're delivering to somebody has to meet the skill set. So just recently I was with an executive and he had assigned to somebody a very large project. And at the same time, he's having challenges with this person delivering on projects and doing his role. And he said to me, the reason I gave him the project was I wanted for him to see that I had confidence in his ability to deliver. Oh my God. He was overloading him. His skill set didn't match, but the leader thought that by showing his confidence, this person will supersede or do better. So that's like the hugging and kissing I talked about earlier in one of the earlier videos. I have confidence in you. You could do a good job. And because I know you've got the talent, I'm going to give you more work. No, this person needs help to get on target, and once they have new skills, we can move them forward. And the last one is this, the 51% rule. The 51% rule says this: people will act if they believe at least 51%, they have a perception, they have a 51% chance of success. 51%. Now it could be 50.0001, but I'm using 51 just to round the number up. What it's saying is that if someone doesn't believe they can achieve it, 49%, 14%, they won't take action. If someone has a perception that they will succeed, a perception, that's all it is, then they will take that jump. That's akin or similar to entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs don't really know if they're going to be successful. But when they take that first step forward, when they take that first step to starting, they're saying, I perceive, I believe I have a chance of winning. Now, all their friends around them are saying, are you kidding me? This person will not succeed at anything. But their belief is the one that takes that next first step. And often, as entrepreneurs have done, is they figure out the next step and the next step, and people do grow. So if you were to use in terms of your tactical definitions, and we're going to give you a lot more tools, your tactics, if you deliver on these several key points that I just delivered, you'll end up giving people the skills that they need or the tools they need to move forward. And as part of that, I want you to remember this cyclonic thinking. This doesn't happen overnight. This is not something you could always sit down and say, oh, I'm going to come up with it. Simple things you can. You can come up with plans for simple activities, but if we're talking about developing plans that change the way the course of the organization works, you need to have a full skill set to be handle the larger projects as well as the smaller. And we're covering all of these because the CST model works in all cases. So make sure to spend the time on the tactics, make sure they're detailed enough to work, because done right, you're going to change the way everybody looks at you in terms of your ability to perform. But even more so, you're going to have the success and feeling that you know that the people you're working with are going to be able to achieve the desired outcomes you've set forward. And that's a big win for everybody.